Welcome to this special edition of the FOGS Queenslander Podcast. Today we look back at the 1995 series where Paul Vautin's Neville Nobodies wrote their names into Origin folklore with a stunning series clean sweep. Captain Trevor Gillmeister, who climbed out of a hospital bed to leave his side in Game 3, Mr. Queenslander Billy Moore, and the last bloke picked because there was no one else, the kid that Paul Vautin knew nothing about, Ben Ikin, join us today. Welcome to this special edition of the FOGS Queenslander Podcast as we look back on the 1995 series won by Queensland 3-0. I'm joined by Captain Trevor Gillmeister, Ben Ikin and Billy Moore to discuss what has gone down in history as one of Queensland's greatest ever wins. Gentlemen, thanks so much for your time. I've all asked you the same question to start your individual FOGS podcast. What does it mean to you to be a FOG? I'm going to ask a similar question and get your reply to what does it mean to you to be a member of the 1995 side?
For me to be able to captain these great blokes, it was, it's the pinnacle for me. To be and written off, we're going to get beaten, 30 points, 40 points per game. And come out to win 3-0. Certainly, great memories, and when we all see each other, it doesn't matter where or how long it's been. It's like we've seen each other yesterday. You know what I mean? So, it's such a special. And I've told some of the boys this. And during the Origin this year, I'll be walking down the street somewhere, anywhere, and a window will come down, a car will be driving, and people will yell out, "Gilly, 95, best ever," and they just drive off. That'll happen to me 20, 30 times through that Origin series, and I just go, I just go like this, I go, so that kind of, puts a little bit of cream on the pie for me a little bit. That I kind of think, it did mean a lot to the Queenslanders through that period.
Speaking of cream on the pie, for me it was instant celebrity status for me and my bum surfer mates from down the Gold Coast. Like, I'm first year out of high school, most of my mates are doing a trade, and so I got sucked up into this thing, and of course everybody knows the Queensland State of Origin team, so I'd go home between the series and after the series. Probably why I didn't end up in great physical condition by the end of the year. But, geez, we leveraged that hard, me and my mates. And then right at the core, for me, it was a childhood dream realised. I grew up just adoring that team and all the players that wore the jersey, and to think that I got the chance to be part of it. And room with the great Mark Coyne, be skippered by be skippered by this guy here and then play alongside some of my heroes. Just something else.
Billy?
That was my fourth instalment of Origin series. Lost the first three. And when you come along to that one and the landscape it was played in, the Super League war and what we didn't have, to be part of that team, and from the very first camp, very first meeting, it was based on belief. We never entertained the thought we're going to do anything but win. Fatty and Choppy, I look back at Choppy close, talk about people that influence on the outcome. Those two guys, and Choppy, from the word go, made us believe and understand what we were representing and the honour and opportunity we had. It was the greatest 8 weeks of my life, and it's funny, from the moment the curtain went down on that year, every year I've got further away from it, it's actually become bigger and better. And I realised how lucky I was. And as Gilly said, when we see each other, there's this special bond, and we almost look at each other with a smirk and a laugh and go, "Did we do that?" I think
How did that happen?
But
great.
How can you believe it's 30 years? I mean, holy moly, that's just gone so fast. And I remember my dad, not alive anymore, he said, when I first started playing first grade for the Roosters and Arthur got me down there, he said, I'll give you some advice. He said, make the most of it. It'll be over before you know it. You're 21 or whatever. Yeah, Dad, whatever. And it's so true. Like, there's the young blokes now that, and Benny's right. I was the same. I was sitting at home watching Origin, even before Origin, when we half the team were full of Queenslanders, you know what I mean, New South Wales team, I mean, and we'd hang in there, and New South Wales would score 3 or 4 tries at the death, and you know, and it was just amazing to see Arthur running out there that first time and clocking his teammates, and I've said it to Tommy and Radonigus and Arthur years ago, and I said to him, did you realise what you created? You know, like without us winning, if Queensland didn't win, this wouldn't be live. We know that. We know that. You know, and Tommy said, "Oh, I knew we were in trouble, and I seen the big fella coming out, and he's had all the smoke coming out of his nose." And he said, "I was scared for us." He said, because he was so daunting and ready to play. So, as I said, I just love footy to death, but Origin was something special for us Queenslanders.
That 95 series has a similar vibe for a lot of people, but take us back before the game, before you even get into camp, because Ben, you were a young kid that had barely played first grade. Gilly and Billy, you'd played Origin, so you were hopeful of being selected again, would have had a different mindset. You would have most probably would have been the furthest thing from your mind to play Origin in 1995.
I think that the whole rugby league world was distracted by this emerging thing called Super League, right? Yeah. Nobody knew how it was going to affect the game, who was playing, what opportunities it was going to create. You know, there were stories coming through about how much players were potentially going to earn. So there was a whole lot going on. I mean, rugby league's always interesting. It was such a tabloid game. And then at some point, the penny dropped that the Origin series was looming. I remember sitting at home because I'd been reading the press and was just starting out on my career at the Gold Coast Seagulls, and I was fascinated, because I'm still a fan at this point of the Queensland team, about who they were going to pick. Seriously. So I said, we got to go home, boys. I just moved out of home. A couple of my teammates who were also footballers. We've got to see who Queensland's going to pick this year. So I'm sitting on a couch thinking, if they don't pick Broncos players, who's left? And so once they got through the starting side and then read out my name, my God, what's happening? Yeah, he did. He my phone rang sort of half a second after my name got read out, and clearly it was like my birthday at that point, so I'm assuming the phone call's for me. And it was my father, and the first thing he said to me is, "Is there another Ben Ikin on the Gold Coast?" Which I've shared before, but that was honestly what it was like. And there was a whole lot of things happening in the game that were unprecedented. And the Origin thing just sort of capped it off.
So, sorry, while I think of it, like I didn't know who Ben was, to be honest. And Arthur Beecham picked you, didn't he?
Yeah, because I'd been part of a Queensland under-17 side the year before with another bloke that goes okay by the name of Lockyer. And we lost the game, but Arthur came into our sheds after we lost and tried to get me to come to the Roosters. Yeah. And I ended up staying at the Gold Coast Seagulls. And when they literally ran out of options for the 17 at the Maroons, Arthur said, well, you know what? There's this kid I saw last year playing the Queensland under-17s has just made his debut down the Gold Coast. He goes, all right. And Fatty said, well, let's put him in.
When you think about the roster and we look back now at what happened, the Queenslander core and the energy of that side, Craig Teague and Terry Cook, to me, typify the greatness of that event. Yeah. They played 3 games for Queensland. They never thought they'd ever get the opportunity. They will leave the Origin landscape 3-0. Yep. And they took their chance. Terry Cook played sensational.
Yes. The
basically, when they read your name out, you didn't know this, but I was at Percy's Hotel opposite North Sydney Oval, and we were having a few drinks. Had a lot of drinks. It was our post game. They read the teams out, and Greg Florimo was at his beautiful, obnoxious best, giving me a lipful about how Queensland were going to get towed up by New South Wales. I said, is that right? And he goes, Ben Ikin, who's Ben Ikin? I said, he's a fantastic player. he's a good player. And he goes, I bet you $500 we win. And I said, done. Now, you're talking about 2 tight asses. You know, I said, done, $500. Anyway, we win game 1. Anyway, the phone rings the next morning at 7 o'clock in my room. I said, hello, because the old telephone. Hello, it's Flo, 2-0 on the next game. I said, you serious? He goes, yes. I said, I'll take that. Anyway, we win game 2. The next morning I wake up, no phone call. Anyway, I go back to Bears training the next day and I said, Flo, you didn't ring me. He goes, oh, yeah, I did want to. So, no, well, mate, you owe me a gorilla, 1,000.
You want to double up?
Let's go double enough. And he goes, my wife won't let me. She thinks you're certainly to win 3-0.
She's a believer, Steph.
Yeah.
How important was the lead in to game number one to get everyone on the same page, or that belief, and how quickly did it come about?
I remember, like, I was having some conversations with Fatty beforehand, for a couple of weeks, and he asked me, how do you think we go about training and everything like that? And I said, well, and I thought about it beforehand, and I said, well, we're not going to beat them on talent and skill. I said the only way we're going to beat them is build a camaraderie like you've never seen before. And he goes, I like your style. He said, how are we going to do that? I said, bonding, and bonding. And obviously training and getting everything sorted there as well. But
I couldn't spell bonding at this point, but I found out very quickly.
Yeah.
But you had your ID in your back
We
pocket.
couldn't spell the end of it either because you couldn't write.
But I still remember that, we all remember, Choppy, what he said in the first team meeting, and he's got the sausage lips and had to walk out of the room, and Fatty and I used to like a bit of a punt, and when we were rooming together, we used to watch the horses and have a punt and stuff like that, and I remember going, and our rooms were opposite each other, and we used to always bend the spoons like everyone did, leave your door open, and you don't knock on the door, you just walk in someone's room, and I could hear Fatty laughing on the phone. I could hear this number go, and he goes, I said, what's he laughing at? I said, so I walked over to his room, and I said, what are you laughing at? He said, I'm getting on the phone to centre bet. He said, where's specials? I said, well, get some on for me as well. So a couple of those days you could have a bit of a bet on yourself. So
Could you?
Yeah.
Apparently.
Apparently, yeah. Anyway, and so we had a few bets on ourselves, and that was, and I don't have any problems, blokes having a punt on themselves.
Yeah.
Different when they're punting on the opposition. That's a different story.
Back themselves to win.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, and we doubled up and tripled up and
9-2 we were paying.
Yeah,
I think,
9 to
in
2
a 2-horse race.
9-2, 4-1, 9-2. Yeah, I remember it vividly, Ben. And and I just went cha-ching, cha-ching. Thank you very much. Yeah, but it was funny. The boys know that it was weird because everything I touched turned to gold through that period. We were having a bet on the bus coming back from the Gold Coast or going down the Gold Coast, and I couldn't do a thing wrong. Everything was just going. And Fatty, I remember Fatty saying to me, mate, keep it going, keep the run going.
The energy.
Yeah. I said, yeah, it was good.
So coming back from the Gold Coast, so we obviously won game 1, game 2. As I said, this is my 4th instalment, and I'd never won a series. So by the time it comes to game 3, we've won the series. But we don't take our foot off the accelerator. We just go, well, we're going to keep winning. I think we're only the 4th side to win 3 in a row. But the bonding, which I think starts with B and the no, and we decided instead of going the usual 3 days, I think we went a couple of days longer.
Yeah.
And we've had a training session at Prizzy Park. Burley Heads.
Yeah.
And
Burley Bears Ground, yeah.
To say we were atrocious was an understatement. And we've jumped back on the bus. And it sort of captivated the whole spirit where we jumped back on the bus and we know we were terrible. We mixed and mingled with the Queensland fans, which was great. Fatty's got on the bus and he wasn't too happy with us in a certain way, but another way, I couldn't get a read on him. He jumps back on the bus. He goes, that's disgraceful, you blokes. You've let us down. You dropped the ball in front of the fans. They weren't happy. We were sloppy. It's disgraceful. He said, that's it. It's a curfew. We're all curfew. He said, that's it. We're going to cut back on our drinking. You've got to be home by 3 in the morning.
And the bus went, yeah.
Well, that first game was 2-0. It's the lowest scoring representative game in Australian Rugby League history. What are your memories apart from Billy's Queenslander chant at half-time?
Can you tell us your situation? The 2 points come through Wayne Bartram's boot. Yeah. Tell us that. I heard it the other day. I hadn't heard it for 30 years.
Well, they do it all the time now, don't they? With the 30 to 40 metres out, they take the two a lot of the time nowadays. And I remember we got a penalty. I think we got a penalty earlier, and I got him to have a kick, and he missed it. And then anyway, we got another penalty 30 metres right in front. And I said, Bardo, I got the ball, and I said, what do you reckon? And he went, what? I said, kick. He said, for goal? I said, that'd be handy. and I still remember though, because he missed. I'm not 100% sure on the first one anyway, but he lined up. He was lining up. He was taking a bit more time than he normally does, because I watched him at training, and he could kick a goal very good, And a little memory thought come back. I said, hey, Bardo, I don't give a shit if you miss it. As long as you kick it dead, we get the ball back. There's no dramas. He went, I said, mate, just do what you do all the time. And he goes, oh, yeah, no dramas. Anyway, lined up, and he slotted it. And then after the game, we were coming off, and he's going, Gilly, I've won us the game. I said, we've got 2 to go. He goes, oh, shit, I forgot about it. I love him to death, but and he played out of his skin, as well through that period as well. So it was good to see.
I remember going to the game and getting the police escort. And at that point, you're in a camp, and you know there's a game coming. I'm still pretty young. I'm not appreciating the enormity of it. And then, we have the pre-game speech, and still, it's just a game of footy. I'm 18, not thinking too deeply about much. But when I got on that bus and those coppers fired up that siren, we started to make our way through Sydney. I thought, oh my God,
what's going on?
This is important.
Yeah.
And my experience during the game is I only sort of played a stint at the back end. Went through the whole first half, sitting on the sideline. And like I'm almost back in fan mode, because how are you going to use me? It had not been explained to me. So I go through the first half. He goes mad at half time and has been making money off it ever since. We come back for the second half, and I don't know why or when, but at some point it occurs to me that this redhead bloke might actually put me out there. And then all of a sudden I started to get nervous. And at that time I looked at Fatty, and Fatty was looking at me. And he said, you ready to go on? And I'm like, yep. And then he just thrust me out there. And the only thing I can sort of take away from that first game, beyond you and I buggering up a try,
that was close.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. Was that we won, and I wasn't the bloke that lost it for Queensland in my 20-minute stint.
Where'd the Queenslander come from, and why at that time?
Queenslander had actually been around for a decade prior.
Gary Belcher actually used to say it years ago in the 80s. Yeah.
So my first roomie, when I played my first game in 92, game 2 was Peter Jackson. And so I got the mentoring from him, and he's up there with Choppy close as a passionate Queenslander, and wore his heart in his sleeve, and absolutely ferociously regard and love everything about Queensland. And he said to him, Queenslander meant 3 things: help you, mate, find a solution, and no excuses. Because there's no such thing as a glorious loss for Queensland. You're putting lipstick on a pig. That's his words. And he told me that when I just turned 21. And I went, wow, I'm in. I bought into it. Loved it. So in game 1 of that Origin series, we're in the sheds, and I think nine players in that group had not played Origin. Yeah. So it was a record at that point in time for rookies. We had the one Australian player, Rowdy, and he played back in the 60s. So we had to roll in. And New South Wales had, I think, 11 that went on the previous Kangaroo tour, and some of the greatest names of all time. And the great Gary Larson, we're in the sheds, you could feel the energy, the nerves. And Gary looks at me and goes, mate, tell them about the Queenslander. Tell them what Jacko told you. I said, right, no worries. So I told everybody the Queensland story, pumped everybody up. And I started screaming, Queenslander, Queenslander. We've turned and walked down the race onto the field. And for the first time in Australian sport, and especially in rugby league, there was a camera in the tunnel. There'd never been a camera in the tunnel prior to that moment.
Origin, yeah.
Never been it. And as I say, the greatest thing of my life took place. I screamed Queensland, the other 16 blokes shut up, and I've been fucking living off it. But it was a call that Gary knew to help the young guys. Hey, let's lift, because mate, the New South Wales, not only the players but their crowd, they thought it could not lose, and they were celebrating, they were chanting, and the energy that they were bringing was big. And the great thing about that whole 3 camps was it was just the 18 blokes and Choppy and Fatty, wasn't it? We were just such a tight group, and Gary knew how to ignite that passion again, and that's what that call did that moment, that time. And it awoke in all of us something special.
Did you feel a difference getting together for Origin 2 as opposed to 1 after having won game 1? Was there a noticeable difference, or things just kept flowing the way they were?
To me, it was noticeable because I could tell the difference in the 9 debutants had a bit of a spring in their step. Yeah, again, like we believe, and we belong here now, you know what I mean? So, and I thought, this is good, you know what I mean? So there's nothing worse than, like if your first game or whatever and you go out and you get, trampled and things don't go your way. So I think confidence-wise, it was through the roof, for maybe not through the roof, but in the winning that second game, then going on the third game, mate, everyone was strutting in and going
unbeatable.
Yeah, exactly right. No, that was the feeling I got, and me and Fatty spoke about it. That you could tell at training as well. Everyone was a bit more buoyant and had a spring in their step more as well at training.
It was a very simple game plan, wasn't it? I mean, that was the genius behind it. He parades himself as a funny man only, but he's a deep thinker.
He's
loves
a
the game,
nerd.
thinks deeply about the game. He knows what wins, particularly in that arena.
Yeah.
And, I'm talking retrospectively here, of course, because at 18 I'm just being swept up is the best way to describe my experience. But I look back and I think for the team we had and the enormity of the occasion, what he gave us and how he coached us was a perfect fit for that year.
Yeah, he was the right break for the job,
And teamed up, I've already gave him a rap, but teamed up with Choppy Close, they made a great duo.
Yeah.
And as you said, they pitched it to the right level, didn't overcomplicate it, didn't overawe us. He basically got the best out of all the playing group by making sure that we could all plug in our different levels. And by game 2, you're right, the confidence had grown a bit. But it was just like that whole journey was, to me, it was just like
momentum built.
Yeah. And it was seamless because we hadn't finished the task yet. We just kept going. We kept getting better. Every training session was enjoyable and it was fun. We also in the mix and rub off each other and learn and develop.
The bonding sessions went a little longer. Maybe for an extra night each camp.
And the thing was, the squad never turned over. Rowdy didn't play game 2, game 3, but he came on and got tracksuits. So we were a really tight-knit group.
Oh, yeah. 18 players is a big plus too. You know what I mean? Like you see a lot of them nowadays. They churn through the players a fair bit now with injury and stuff like that. But I mean, we wouldn't have had 20-odd players to pick from anyway. So
and then
was good.
You even think about the bloke that did end up joining in he is quintessential Queenslander, right?
Oh, yeah.
Smoking his gaspers,
I didn't actually realise how good he was, Jason Smith, till I trained with him and played with him. I thought, oh shit, this bloke can play.
Oh yeah,
when you frame it up, you're right. He's probably the last smoker. Like, he was old school, wasn't he? Old world. He'd smoke, in the sheds and training. I don't think I saw him sweat. Did he sweat?
Oh, who knows?
But you got to remember, he, with all due respect, in Hall of Fame, he outplayed Brad Fittler.
Oh,
in a position. Correct me if I'm wrong. Jason Smith hadn't played 5'8" before. So he jumps into a basic position he wasn't that familiar with, or wasn't familiar with at all, up against one of the greatest 5'8" of all time, and outplays him.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And, I mean, going back to the first game, I remember going to talking to Jed and Tony Hearn, and I remember, and Wayne used to do this all the time with the front rowers, before the games and stuff like that as well. And I remember going to them both just before we were about to kick off, and I elected to kick off, and because I wanted to give our blokes to get into them first, and then I said kick off, and Freddie went, oh, okay, and he looked at me funny and look at that. And I didn't even shake his hand or anything. And but I remember just about there's a little delay in the kickoff for some reason. Anyway, and I remember saying to Herney and Jed, "What do you reckon?" I can't say it on here, but I said it was a bit different. I said, "What about those two at the back?" It was Chief and Spud pushing off the back fence. And I said, "We're just going to have to stop those two and we'll half a chance, you know." And I said, "What about those two at the back? Bit different. And what about I chop them in the thighs all night and you just do what you have to do over the top?" And typical Jed just went, "Sounds good to me, bud. Let's give it to him."
And he did.
Yeah. And it was about the 73rd minute, 74th minute or something. It was right in front of the grandstand. We had a tap. They had a tap, and I hit Chief low, and Jed's giving him a little bit what for over the top, and he rolled, and he's rolled over Chief like that, and he goes, "Well, you two off," like this. And I said, "We got him, Jed." You know, like 73 minutes, he just kept coming, like, you know, take your hat off to him. But it was, you know, we fought, and I thought, well, we've done our job. You know, I mean, stop those two from making too many metres, and I thought that was a pretty good chance of winning the game, and it wasn't all about that, but it was close to it.
But that's amazing in and of itself, because those two guys are wired to give their best every game, Chief and Spud.
Yeah, without doubt.
Nothing but their best.
Yes.
Yeah.
And in that arena, you know, it's not as though they gave up or backed off.
No.
So to think, you know, that our guys up front got the better of them,
Matched them.
shows how good that they had to be. Yeah.
Over 3 games, though, too, not just
Yeah.
the first one.
Yeah,
so then we
yeah.
go to game 2, which is in Melbourne, the MCG match. More points scored in game number 2, but I suppose most people remember that game for the brawl, which sort of sparked everything for the rest of the series, I suppose.
What do you think was the most disappointing aspect of the brawl? Who do you think performed the worst in their one-on-one blue, Potsy?
Well, it was like it was choreographed, wasn't it, between you and David Barnhill, Billy?
Well, I think Barney, former Australian heavyweight champion, I knew how to stay away from him. It was embarrassing, wasn't it? I'd actually boxed 4 years. I'd boxed 4 years with Johnny Lewis, and he's never really spoke to me since. I brought his boxing gym into disrepute. We went to that scrum, as you said, and we knew what was happening. And when it erupted, it was just on for young and old. And I saw there was different confrontations. I think the only guys that didn't fight were Gary Larson and Greg Foreman, because they were brother-in-laws, married sisters. Wow. But everyone else had a bit of a crack. Even singing and singing was
Hopper.
Hopper, yes. And I think that Danny Moore was 2-on-1 against Hopper. But again, this is the astute nature of Fatty. He basically worded us up saying, this is what's going to happen if you say Queenslander, there's going to be a fight. No dramas. Yeah. We'll do that. But he goes, the key here is it's a side.
Play footy after it,
The side that gets back into the groove and plays rugby, forgets about the fight, is the one that will win. Yeah. And that's exactly what we did.
Well, 2 tries. We scored 2 tries not long after that.
Yeah.
And I remember we said that. We said, let's play footy now. Let's just get our heads on. Bugger the fight. Let's go and play footy. And everyone obviously got their heads screwed on footy wise, and we scored a couple of really good tries.
Yeah, people forget those sorts of things become pivotal moments for the reason about the game. And game number 2, of course, is a series deciding win. What in that second half as the realisation, does the realisation hit when you're out on the field that, you know, we can, if we win this game, we'll win the series? Was that any part of the mindset?
Oh, I didn't really think about that until after the game, to be honest.
I busted my ribs, so I was actually off the field at the time. But I look back on it, and one of my favourite moments was when you see BD make the break, and he turns back and he gives a bit of lip. And Gary Belch is commentating, and I think his words were, "Oh, we've stuck the boot in."
Yeah.
But I think too, weren't lucky. We were under the pump a little bit because he got hurt. I think Herney Tony Hearn. Was that the third game? Hearney. The second game he got a little bit busted as well. So we were, and I said to him, mate, I need you, mate. And he went, yeah, okay. Righto. So so we had a couple of blokes not real fit or healthy in that second game as well.
Do you remember the emotions when the siren went at full time?
I think it was more relief, really, to be honest. And I was so proud of everyone. You know what I mean? Like it's just obviously, and take it to my deathbed that so proud of all these blokes and what we achieved, because that possibly a big chance that it will never be done again. You know what I mean? So and I think the best thing, as Benny alluded to before, that Choppy and you said, and Fatty, that were so, and the King was on the sideline.
Yeah.
Doing commentary or whatever, and he's jumping up and down on Fatty's back, and and everyone's going berserk, and all the wives and girlfriends and they're all jumping up and down as well. So yeah, I remember looking over and seeing the big scrum of people jumping up in the air and going berserk, and I just went, oh shit, we've done that. Yeah. So
That's
it was
something
good.
special.
Yeah.
I remember from that second camp being on a team bus going somewhere and looking out across, I think at Port Phillip Bay, is it? And seeing Phillip Island, is it?
Yep.
And asking someone out aloud in the company of Jim Bannigan, is that Tasmania?
I forgot about that.
So before we get into the discussion around the third camp, I set myself up to get a special gift by the time we arrived back for the third game with printed on the side of the cap, "Lost in Space." That's my standout memory from game two. I also, the other thing that sticks out for me, remember we went to the MCG when it was empty before the game?
Yes, yeah.
There was a lot of firsts for me in that period of time. First time I'd been to the MCG, and what stuck out for me is that thing had an aura, even when it was empty.
Yeah.
That Great Southern Stand.
Just special.
Amazing. I remember in the altercation with Barnhill, we broke away from the group and we were throwing haymakers left, right and centre. We've fallen over the advertising signings in front of the Great Southern Stand. So to me, it sort of encapsulated Victorians' understanding of rugby league at the time. They cheered when we ran out. They cheered when someone caught a bomb, and they cheered during the fight. The rest of the time they were quiet. But they were watching Barnhill throw all these punches, and they must have thought, geez, these rugby league blokes aren't that tough. They can't hit each other.
They would have thought you landed a few, mate. It was too far away.
Thank you. Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed part one of our special episode on the 1995 series winning side. Part two will be available soon. Make sure you hit the notification bell so you don't miss it, and please like and subscribe so you can keep up with the latest episodes.